the year 1845, one of his plays was being, in fact it was The Raven, was being performed on stage, not a play but a poem, being performed on stage in Boston.
Okay.
Well, nobody liked it.
Oh, really?
Well, it wasn't because that they didn't like the poem. The poem was fine, but they didn't like him.
Oh.
And when they found out it was written by Edgar Allan Poe, everybody, the whole audience got up and left the theater.
Oh, my goodness.
They just left. They didn't like him.
Oh, wow.
He was a little odd.
Obviously.
Yes,
to say the least.
To say the least. Anyway, that was in 1845. The year was 1933, when Dr. Albert Einstein moved to Princeton, New Jersey, after arriving in the U.S. from his troubled homeland of Germany. He left Germany because there was a lot of unrest in 1933, and he said, I don't want to be here.
Was that how he said it?
I am leaving.
Albert Einstein talked like that?
Well, no, somebody did. The year was 1945, when a little old girl from Smithfield, North Carolina, married a famous band leader by the name of Artie Shaw. Her name was Ava Gardner.
Yes, it was.
And that he and she were married this day in 1945. Birthdays today include...
Do we know him? Ever heard of him?
Yeah, you've heard of this guy.
Okay.
His name, he was the leader of the group, the Union Gap. He did Young Girl, Woman, This Girl is a Woman Now, Over You, Lady Willpower, Gary Puckett, and the Union Gap. You remember?
I've heard no, but I've heard of him.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gee whiz. You ever heard of Michael McKean? Me either. But he was. You ever heard of Laverne and Shirley?
Yes.
All right. He was Lenny.
Really?
On Laverne and Shirley.
Okay.
If you look him up and do a search on him, he is one of the most talented producers, directors, musicians, composers in Hollywood.
Interesting.
He has so many credits, it takes forever to read his credits.
My goodness.
Who knew? He was Lenny. Lenny and Squiggy.
Yeah, I remember.
Today he's having a birthday. He's 67 today.
Happy birthday.
Margot Kidder, the actress, is 66 today.
Okay.
She was in Superman, Amityville Horror, and a lot of other stuff. George Wendt's the same age. George Wendt played Norm on Cheers.
Yes.
George Wendt is 66 today. Bill Hudson, the comedian and singer of the Hudson Brothers and such, he is 65 today. And Sharon Leal having a birthday. She was in Boston Public, Legacy, Guiding Light, Face the Music, and a bunch of other stuff.
Happy, if it's your special day.
That's right. Okay.
I want to give some more details, Wayne, about a run that I was talking about yesterday through the City of Goldsboro's Wellness Committee. We were talking about how we're having a 5K run/walk in November actually the 8th at 4 p.m. at Stony Creek Park. Okay. And it's called the Beaver Moon Run.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? We've got a little bit of details about why it's called Beaver Moon. It all reverts back to and goes back to Native American Indians. Native Americans. All right, let's see. The full moon names date back to Native Americans who kept track of the seasons by giving distinctive names to each reoccurring full moon.
Yeah.
So the November full moon was the time to set beaver traps before the swamps froze to ensure a supply of warm winter furs.
Right.
So we're, of course, holding it November the 8th in Stony Creek Park, so that is why we call it the Beaver Moon.
Got it.
Now, back in January, that moon is called Wolf Moon.
Wolf?
Wolf.
Oh.
Yes. Wolf Moon, that's January.
Wolf Moon.
April is Frog Moon.
That's not for Wolf Blitzer.
Not for Wolf Blitzer, no.
Okay.
April is Frog Moon.
Frog Moon.
Yep.
Ribbit.
August is Moon of the Green Corn.
Moon of the Green Corn.
Yes. And December is Cold Moon.
Cold?
Yeah, that one's a little boring compared to the rest, but that's Cold Moon. And of course, November was Beaver Moon. So just to give you a little history of this, all reverts back to Native Americans and how they named their moons and kept up with their seasons. So join us.
How about that?
Join us on November the 8th.
I don't see an Allegheny moon.
You don't?
No.
I've never heard of that.
Oh, that was an old song.
Well, I don't believe it's one of their moons.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
Not happening.
Anyway, let's move on.
Let's go to our interviews.
Dr. Stephen Peters is with us this morning. He is the head of psychology at Cherry Hospital. How you doing?
Sir. Hey, Wayne. Good to be here.
Man, always good to have you back in the studio with us today.
Thank you much.
You always bring new and fresh information, and you are able to explain a lot of things that many of us are just curious about. I want to talk today about, I want to compare what some would refer to as self-esteem and what others would refer to as self-image. Are the two at all similar or alike, or
well,
what?
I often compare it to like self-worth. You know, a lot of times self-image, or now I'm doing it, self-esteem.
Self-esteem.
It's sort of probably the more common term.
Okay.
We always like to talk about, oh, he's got low self-esteem.
Right.
And maybe that's a problem, and so he needs some help. He's got low self-esteem. Self-esteem doesn't really capture the details sometimes. It's really often the person is really talking about self-worth. What is that person's value of their self? And do they value themselves in the proper, appropriate ways? One of the problems that we see is when some people are not controlling themselves, particularly when they're doing criminal behavior. It's not, and then they say, well, you got low self-esteem, and that sort of somehow explains the criminal behavior.
Has that become a catchphrase of some sort?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But it's sort of like, well, I think you're supposed to feel bad if you do bad things. You're supposed to be happy about it?
No. No.
I feel good about yourself? It's sort of like, well, what have you done lately that you should feel good about? Doing good things is what makes people feel good, right? If you do things that are not good, maybe you should feel bad. But we sort of get hung up in this, sort of in a self-esteem campaign that everybody should feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, every little leaguer gets a trophy.
Right. Oh,
because
yes.
you might hurt his little self-esteem.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a funny example how we've taken this self-esteem thing a bit far. Because we want people to feel good about who they are, how they are, and the people that they are becoming. I mean, that's important. But at the same time, if you have reasons not to feel good about what you've been doing, it would be reasonable not to feel that great. Man, that's good reality testing. That's an accurate perception. When you look in the mirror and you don't feel good about what you're doing, well, that might be a match. You know, you might have something there.
This makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's just common sense or reality of it all. But now you touched on something that I don't want to go too far off here, but I wanted to ask you about that. The little leaguers or the competitive children who are in a competition of some sort, who all get trophies.
Sure.
Of course, you know, somebody has to win, somebody has to get second place and third place, and somebody has to come in last, always. Yeah. But what is the thinking in your profession about this sort of activity?
The idea that we are rewarding participation, effort, good sportsmanship.
Well, that's all good.
You know, all of those things we should recognize. Everybody should be recognized.
Exactly.
But at the same time, the winners should get maybe a little bigger trophy. Lest everybody get what we used to call the consolation prize.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Dairy Queen coupon, or whatever else you used to get. But the winners, I mean, there's still a difference between the winning team and the team that wasn't quite there.
Right.
So I think we're trying to acknowledge the other values, the participation, the sportsmanship, and hey, it's good that you came out. It's good that you had a good season with us. It's a good thing to do. Let's reinforce that.
Right.
And so everybody does need that acknowledgement. And I think that was probably the beginnings of this idea. Let's encourage everybody. But at the same time, that is not sufficient. That's not the whole job.
Right.
We want to encourage everybody, but then we still have the task of rewarding the winners.
Right.
And let's not confuse the two.
Okay.
Both things are important.
Okay, well, getting back to the self-esteem, self-worth. I hear, in fact, I'm guilty of this as well, self-deprecation. How does that play into this?
Yeah, a little bit of self-critical. We see it in when people are kidding around and being playful and having a good sense of humor. Right. A little bit of that's kind of keeps you modest, keeps you humble, and certainly not a problem to do. Some people, though, can take that, and it's just an artifact of how they truly feel about themselves, and that they indeed are overly self-critical. And it gets into a deeper issue for some people, and that would be my concern or caution about that. A little bit of playfulness and self-critical is being okay, as long as it's not part of kind of who you are, and kind of do you truly believe that kind of in a deeper self-critical kind of way. That would be a concern.
Is there a way we can tell when somebody is being funny and self-deprecating, saying, "Hey, I'm just a goofball"?
I think if all your friends agree with you, if you're self-critical, to say,
sure you are.
Yeah, you are that way, by the way. You know, and nobody laughs. Right. That's a problem.
That's a problem. But what if there's some just a hint of truth there, and you're actually just kind of
playing
around?
Yeah.
And you really feel that way.
Yeah. I think all of us have to look at ourselves. How do you really feel about yourself? Do you feel good about who you are, how you are, and the way you are with other people? There's things that, we all strive to be better, but for the most part, we need some appraisal of to feel good about ourselves. That's an important energy to feel that way. I like to think about it. An early definition I worked with for a while. And it's hard to explain, but it's sort of like when we're kids. We sort of get programmed as to how we should be, who we are, how you should act.
Yeah.
Sort of your mom and dad or your family, your community, your teachers, your Cub Scouts, your Sunday school teacher. They all teach you that. This is what we expect of you.
Children are seen and not heard.
Yeah.
You know,
whatever that expectations might be.
Yeah.
And to the degree that you're living that program, that's kind of self-esteem, right?
Okay.
Because who you think you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to be, and because that's what's programmed inside of you, that's your benchmark. And to the degree that you're living that, okay, you should feel good about that. That's how we know we're doing well. To the degree if we start falling down and we're not living up to those expectations, that's going to cost you emotionally. You're not going to feel good about it, right? Now, wherever that benchmark has been set, that can be the tricky part. Because some people have a pretty, some folks don't have much expectations of their kids, and their bar's been set pretty low.
Yeah.
And so those kids have a hard time achieving or striving or even getting in the game. And other times the bar can be way too high. Those aspirations they're just not achievable. So those kids struggle too, because I just can't be what Grandpa expected me to be.
Yeah.
So that to the degree we have that benchmark, we kind of understand that benchmark that's been programmed in us, mostly when we're young, and to the degree that we can live that life, is sort of a kind of a self-esteem measure, right?
Now, there was a time, years and years, decades ago, when the term programmed referred to something in sci-fi, when you programmed a robot or you...
Yeah.
And nowadays, we all can program computers to some degree.
That's right. Now it's common...
It's a common terminology, and when you say that you were programmed and as a child to do certain things a certain way, then we can almost understand what that means. But what does that really mean? When a child is programmed as a youngster or as an infant, can infants be programmed to react a certain way?
In infancy, it's a little early because they're just figuring out where they landed.
Yeah.
Hey, how many toes, how many fingers, what are these things I have in my arms?
Right.
At some point, and it's probably very early, it might certainly be within that first year of life, kids start internalizing sort of the emotional climate that they have found in the atmosphere, a little bit of that. Eventually, you're starting to internalize. I guess that's the psychology term for programming. You're internalizing and absorbing the way people are, what they expect of you. So you start learning the behavioral expectations. You sort of pick up the emotional vibe that's around you. That's the best way I can explain that. It's pretty amorphous, but...
It sounds like you're being programmed.
Yeah, it's kind of being programmed, but you're internalizing all of that. and taking bits and pieces, largely of other people's examples, or how they model for you, and then that's how you become who you are, right? You're sort of a puzzle of other pieces that other folks around you have offered you, and so perhaps you're a little bit like your grandpa, you're a little bit like your uncles, you're a little bit like your dad, you're a little bit like different people that you have, in probably unknown ways, have internalized and have made you who you are.
So you're a reflection of
all of
your
that
world,
all of that,
what's around you.
Yeah, all that community. And so that includes how you feel about yourself, and how do other people feel good about you? And you're going to absorb some of that vibe, because they felt good. Yeah, I felt good about me too. But again, that's ultimately the benchmark standards that you internalize. And then again, it's a matter of, then as adults, do we live that life? And do we meet those expectations that are within our reach, that we're realistic, the things we can live to be? And then you should feel good about that. There's reasons to feel good about how you're doing.
People, you mentioned people, bad people doing bad things, and they feel bad about that.
But some of them do bad things. Here's the ironic part of this, is what gets my attention. Bad people do bad things, but they feel good about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, well, why would you feel good for this horrendous behavior things you've done?
Yeah.
Maybe the fact you should feel bad about that.
Is that understood?
Sometimes not enough. I find myself often explaining that.
Oh, really?
That somebody's done some pretty horrific things, quite tragic, really, and yet then in a naive way, it's you could find somebody to say, well, yeah, it's because they have low self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves. And I'm thinking, why would he feel good about himself for doing all this outrageous behavior? It would be better if he was remorseful, apologetic, self-introspective, looking at himself. And often it's blaming other people. I did it because somebody else, or it's not me, it's them, it's other excuses for their irresponsible, dangerous behavior. And I'm a big fan of being responsible for yourself. And that we are each responsible for what we do.
It should be accountable.
And if you do things that you should be proud of, well, feel that. It's okay. Some of us we kind of get taught to be a little bit too humble. That's part of the programming. Don't get too big. Well, feel good for what you are proud of. That's perfectly reasonable. At the same time, when you screw up, when you make a mistake, let alone you've done something that's hurt other people, you shouldn't feel good about that. And there may be consequences to pay. And then take that responsibility. You can't blame other people. I would have been fine until the sheriff got there,
Nothing was wrong until then.
Yeah. And somehow it's the sheriffs who caused me these problems. Well, it's because the neighbors called and you were doing all this stuff. And so that idea that we kind of stay reality. I'm a big fan of reality. And so that our image of ourselves, who we are, how we feel, should sort of reflect the realities of our lives.
There was and I know everyone's heard this, about a leopard changing his spots. You can't change a leopard's spots. So when someone will do bad things and then is caught or corrected, and then they're talked to about this, do they change, or can they change, or does this stay within their programming throughout their life?
Sometimes it's challenging. And here's the biggest challenge is it's just like the example that I like to use is when we talk about educating, teaching young children. We have to repeat the lesson sometimes. And eventually they figure it out. If you go out of the yard, okay, you get a problem. You go out of the yard and then pretty soon they learn, can't go out of the yard. If you do something and you end up in jail, and it's just a brief period of time, or somebody gets you out, somebody the next morning, and it really wasn't that big a deal, and then most of the time you're doing it, you're getting away with it, that's pretty inconsistent parenting. Will. And so what are you really teaching them? Well, that most of the time, more often than not, they can get away with it, and it's not a big deal. There were a few times, yeah, I had to, I had some problems, but most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's not an issue. Well, we need to stick with some accountability, responsibility, and some consequence. Mm-hmm. You can get that leopard to do a little bit better if you consistently, just like any other animal training, be very consistent with those expectations, those consequences, and those incentives. If you get that leopard to say, listen, here's what you got to do, and I'll reinforce you highly, I'll reward you highly if you can do this, mm-hmm. that leopard will draw new spots.
Well, could it be that it helps to be consistent and repetitious as far as getting this person to do the things over and over? They suddenly realize.
Sure, and balanced. More probably on the side of reinforcement and reward for doing the proper thing.
Yeah.
And maybe 30-40% consequence for doing the inappropriate thing, what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So this kind of shaping, if you will, has to do with reinforcing what we do expect out of people, and then punishing and having consequences for what's not acceptable.
I hate to bring up an example. No, I don't really hate to bring up an example.
Because you wouldn't be doing it, would you?
That's right. I'm going to bring up an example. And of course, parents often receive, and rightly so, finger pointing at parents for perhaps programming their children in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Now, right or wrong, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. But what comes to mind, and I don't know why, but what comes to mind is Jeffrey Dahmer. Mm-hmm. He had the sweetest parents. Mm-hmm. They were nice. They were not violent. They were hardworking parents. They loved their son, and he turned out to be a monster. Where's the connection there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it turns out there was a pretty big disconnect. And really, as I've studied his profile very closely for a good long time now, the level of psychopathology in that example is pretty extreme, and it was there from very, very early days.
Okay.
And his parents, almost in a kind and gentle, naive way, missed a lot of the early signs.
Okay.
And I think that was really the ultimate disconnect. They did not see this young man struggling like he was and what was truly going on, and how he was off on a different path quite early, really. But they weren't really watching that.
How do you convince a parent that they need to change the way they program their child? Or how do you do that?
Or they need to be involved in that effort.
Okay.
They need to participate.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a better example before that you gave about their parents really were not participating.
Okay.
They were just sort of maybe busy with whatever else. Yeah. They were kind and gentle and nice folks, but they really maybe weren't actively involved in the parenting process. They weren't really engaged as much as they could have been, perhaps. And that parents need to be involved. Regardless of what you set as that bar, set it where you want, but set it, stick to it, be consistent, and then be involved in helping that youngster internalize, offering those expectations, be very clear, and make it easier. And so if you see them going off in a tangent or getting off the path a bit, that you're involved enough to notice the diversion, and that you can help everybody get back on track. It's about being involved and having a good relationship. So those early relationships with kids is what's really valuable. That if you wait till somebody's 18, 19 years old, and you think that's a good time to build a relationship, it's all over by then.
Is it? It's a little late by then.
Yeah.
When is a good time? Is it from birth till?
When you bring them home from the hospital, that's when you get busy. Yeah.
Well, you're a parent now.
That's right.
Right.
And some folks would probably say it's before you even get to the hospital.
Well, that may be true.
Or even need to go to see the doctor. You need to be thinking about what will it be like to have a child in our home? How will we need to be different? Well, we'll need a new room. That's true.
Yeah.
Some of your guys' stuff, you're going to have to move this stuff out. Okay, that'll be the nursery. Well, now you need to think about, well, what else our family's values, our expectations. How are we going to raise this child? So parents need to have those conversations, maybe with their parents and with other folks in their circle, to talk about how to be involved and how they're going to specifically be involved in their child's life.
When a child, as it turns out, when a child suddenly gets in trouble and the parent realizes, wow, what have I done here? Have I missed something? People who watch Oprah or Lifetime or Hallmark, any of those programs there, they suddenly realize, you know, that was a TV show and it's not real. But suddenly they are there and they're involved, pardon me, with their child in trouble. Is it too late? Can you turn them around, or what does a parent do?
The earlier the better, the younger the better, and certainly as somebody is too old and already into young adulthood, boy, it's challenging. It's not too late. I don't think it's ever too late, but it's really challenging the older an individual gets. Certainly into early adolescence, preteens, boy, those, when we talk about that as being the formidable years, the wonder years, that's true. It happens way before teenagerhood, that a person is absorbing, little sponges that they are, everything that's around them, including some of your bad habits. They'll get absorbed too. And so it's making sure that you have planted the correct seeds in those early years, and so that you're going to kind of reap that later on.
What about when there is a problem between the parents? The child is there, the child is loved, and the parents are doing all they can to teach the child or program the child, but now there's a problem between the parents and suddenly they're separated, divorced. The child is affected, right?
Oh, sure, and that's very distressing for a lot of reasons. Other things that happen in the family when the family does split up that way. You know, it kind of gets us back to self-esteem in terms of how we view ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. Particularly when parents who have not been able to reconcile their relationship go their different ways. It's so easy to be critical of that absent parent. But the fact is, well, that child is maybe 50%, maybe even more than that, of internalized who that other person is. So when you criticize that other parent, you're also criticizing that part that is within that child. And so when they're with the other parent, they're criticizing the opposite parent. And guess what? Well, the child has a lot of that opposite parent internalized in them too. So now they're getting criticized for that part. And so everywhere the child goes, their core, who they are, is sort of now being rejected, criticized, and saying why that's all wrong. And it's that you might be thinking you're talking about your ex-spouse. You're talking a lot about who's inside your child.
And suddenly the child feels this and takes this as...
who they may or may not have an idea about who you're talking about, or the various behaviors that you're talking about, but they can feel inside what has become very critical. Wow. And that's where it gets hurtful. Yeah. That's where kids really struggle when they're saying, well, let's take sides, and this side's against that side, and this side's against that side, and I'm part of everybody.
Right.
I'm part of my grandparents, my uncles, everybody on each side I'm all a part of that. And if all this critical fire is going on, all the child is absorbing is that criticism and assault. And that's a hard thing to muster through when you're little, and all your support then has been preoccupied with their own campaign.
The child suddenly feels they have no support.
Yeah, and often people who are hurting, as divorcing families often are, become more absorbed with themselves, and they get busy with their own misery, and so they're not as supportive as they once were. So there's that loss of support, the extra bombardment of criticism. It's challenging.
The self-esteem, self-worth, self-image.
All that gets right back on the table.
Yeah.
And if you've built up, it doesn't have to be bad, but it has to be talked about. And you have to resist that temptation to be critical to the other ears that are in the room, so to speak.
Wow. All right. Well, we could continue, but
Yes,
we're
we
out of
could.
time.
Well,
All right.
maybe next time we'll continue this conversation.
Yes, I hope so. Dr. Steve Peters, the head of psychology at Cherry Hospital, thank you so much for being with us.
Always a pleasure, Wayne.
Thank you. And we are back on Wayne Goldsboro Television.
Thank you for staying with us.
Today's Friday.
Still happy Friday.
Happy.
Wayne and I are very happy it's Friday.
Yes, we are. Why are we happy?
Everyone enjoys their weekends. You know, we all
That's
need a
it.
couple days just to relax,
Yeah.
do things with your family.
Yeah. And the weather
Recoup.
is just so nice.
That's right, it is. It's
I
beautiful.
love this time of year.
Fall is wonderful.
Fall is wonderful, and I'm beginning to see hints of leaves changing.
Love it, love it.
I do too. Color. I want to go out and get some pictures.
Yeah, Goldsboro's Wayne County is a beautiful place when the leaves start turning that beautiful red and orange and gold.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Love it.
And if you are from outside North Carolina,
Yes.
I know you're loving this because I was talking with a lady who was from Nevada. And she says, I just love the trees here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The part of Nevada where she was from, of course, there's a lot of trees in Nevada, but there's parts of Nevada that are rather sparse and treeless. And
Like Las
that's where
Vegas?
she was from, in that area. She was from the desert area, and
Yes.
she just loves it here in North Carolina because
I'm
this
sure.
she says, "Oh, I just stand outside and look at the trees."
It's just green and beautiful
It
and
is beautiful.
getting ready to be red and gold.
No.
All right, mark your calendars. Wayne County Cornhole. A tournament will be happening here for our community on October the 25th, November the 15th, and December the 13th.
Okay.
You can check out everything out and get details on their website, waynecountycornhole.com. You can register, you can bring a team. They'll have cash prizes and lots of other things to offer right here in Goldsboro. I don't know where. Do you see where it's actually taking place? I do not.
No.
But visit the website, waynecountycornhole.com,
Yeah, you can
for
find out
any
right
details.
there. Wayne?
Yeah.
What was that? WayneCountyCornhole.com?
Yes, waynecountycornhole.com.
Okay. All right, very good. Let's see, I had something, but I can't find it. Okay, again, WayneVotesEarly.com. Get all the information about voting there at that location. And there's Wayne Votes Early. It's going to be 5 locations you can vote early for midterm elections, and that's coming up November 4th. Between October 23rd and November 1st, you can vote early, providing you are a registered voter.
Know your candidates.
Please.
And what's the website?
WayneVotesEarly.com. I don't understand how someone could actually go into a voting booth, and
We're going to encourage everyone just to research,
Please.
get to know.
know who you're voting for.
That's
For crying-
right.
How do you vote for someone you don't? Well, because, Josh down the street, he told me who to vote. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No,
Bert said to vote for this guy or that guy or this lady or that lady. Don't do that.
no. I want to remind you, if you see a problem here in Goldsboro, we want you to report a problem. You can do that now on all your mobile devices. We have a GIS tracking system that's to help us manage any concern that any of our citizens have. Goodness, I can't read this writing. Hold on one second.
Okay, oh, it's kind of
Time
tiny
for the
there,
glasses.
isn't
It is tiny. It's an easy-to-use online solution for citizen reporting. If you see a stop sign that's sideways, if you see a pothole that is messing up your car or bad or in your way, if you see anything that is on a City of Goldsboro property, you can report it through GIS. You can take a picture, report it through that, or you can hit on location. It'll actually show on a map where you are, where the problem is, and you will actually be included in the tracking of when that problem is solved. Now, one piece of advice, and it's GIS. Let me see. Oh, it's 311gis.com.
311gis.com.
And that is an app that you can pull up and download onto your phone or any mobile device. But want to remind you, a lot of the roads in Goldsboro, you may not know, are North Carolina Department of Transportation roads.
Yes.
So you're going to think they're the city's roads and their responsibility, but they're not. There are many roads, like your Spence Avenues, your Ash Street.
Yeah.
There's many that we all assume are the City of Goldsboro's responsibility, and they're not. They're North Carolina Department of Transportation, and the city cannot touch, fix, complete anything.
Because they are state highways.
That's right. But you can still report it, and we'll send it on to North Carolina Department of Transportation.
Also, not only the city of Goldsboro, but Wayne County. If you see a problem in Wayne County,
Exactly.
same thing. So get on that 311gis.com.
.com.
And we've got to run on.
That's right.
We'll be back next week. We'll be back. Join us again Monday. We'll be right here at this time, here on Wayne Goldsboro Television.
Have a great weekend.
Please do have a great weekend. Tell us all about it. We want to know what you did. Until then, I'm Wayne Alley.
And I'm Kim Best. And this is what's happening in your community.